Okay, it looks like we are recording and we are live. Hello, I am Dr. Dana Mintzer, family physician, founder of Love Health, and your host here on the Unfiltered Doctor. At Love Health, we're all about real, compassionate, accessible, and non rushed whole person care. And we're excited to be expanding our services as well to offer full health plans that are affordable, transparent, and serve as better alternatives to the traditional health insurance plans for individuals and employers. Today, I am honored to share a conversation that's personal, powerful, and deeply needed. Today on the Unfiltered Doctor, I'm joined by an extraordinary guest, Nova Gibson. Nova is director, founder, and primary counselor of Brighter Outlook Narcissistic Abuse Counseling Service and the go-to expert on narcissistic abuse recovery in Australia. She is the author of Australia's best-selling practical self-help book of 2023, Fake Love, Understanding and Healing Narcissistic Abuse, published by HarperCollins, and host of her own podcast, Fake Love and Flying Monkeys. I'm going to put all links to her information in the comments section and the info section. Nova has helped thousands of clients in Australia and around the world with one-on-one professional support. She lives in Brisbane, Australia. So Nova, your work is deeply human, raw, and incredibly empowering, and you bring clarity to a topic that so many people here are just beginning to understand. And I'm just so grateful that you're here today.
Look, I'm so grateful that you reached out, Dana, and the honor is mine. I'm really looking forward to our discussion. Thank you for having me.
Yay, I'm excited. So I did prepare some questions and we can go off the cuff and everything, but I just wanted to point out, Nova, that I found you on social media years ago, and your content was really helping. It helped validate a lot of what I was going through at the time, but I actually hadn't read your book until recently, and I was shocked. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I wish I had read this before I ended up leaving my situation. And it just would have saved me so much confusion, pain, and sabotage. And I wanted to start by asking you, what inspired you to do this work and write Fake Love? And I guess, did you ever imagine it would impact so many people this deeply?
Well, to answer your second question, absolutely not. It's just it's truly been a shock to myself at the reach it's had and the messages I receive every day that are exactly like yours, Dana, which is, I wish I had this book earlier, and thank you so much. It's like you were a fly on the wall during my relationship. But to answer your to answer your first question, the reason I wrote Fake Love initially a couple of years ago was I've been meaning to do it for such a long time. And I wrote it because of my own experience. I was already a counselor. I was already a therapist. But I was one of those therapists who did the psychology at uni, well, behavioral science, and I had no clue, and I think that I was one of those therapists that was, telling people, oh, maybe you just kind of need to get on with it. Maybe there's some codependency issues. I don't think I ever use that word. I hate that word when it comes to narcissistic abuse. But after my own experience, and I looked for help, and there was none. I went to see a psychologist, and she was beautiful. She was gorgeous, and she was so helpful in her own way with things like mindfulness and anxiety and things like that. She certainly wasn't condescending, but she had no idea. And when I mentioned the word narcissist, because I'd been researching, she I felt, patronized me maybe a little and just disregarded it. And I felt really lost because I wasn't having my trauma validated, especially by a professional. So hence my journey began. Lots of years of reading, researching, talking to my own clients, eventually becoming an expert in the area, where that's all I do now. I don't do any other type of counselling. And then I wanted to put all of my years of counselling victims and survivors all over the world, I wanted to put it on paper. And hence Fake Love came along, and it resonated with people all over the world. I didn't know that there were so many people like myself, like you, who were screaming out for validation and support.
Everything that you said is so pertinent. And I think that I just want to make a point that I found that really something that was very helpful in your book is that you use fictitious names, but you're telling the story of a person, right? Of a person, of a survivor of narcissistic abuse from start to finish. And then you're interweaving the concepts that you want to communicate about this type of abuse into this story. And it's just genius. I just love how you did that. It's amazing. So
thank you. Look, I'm a writer as well as a therapist, so it kind of it was just the first thing I thought of. It was easier for me to paint a picture which someone would relate to, which was just an amalgamation of all of my beautiful clients and my experience, your experience, everyone's experience, and then explain each little thing that this person went through in terms of, the psychological concepts, why she stayed, what was going on at this time when he was gaslighting her and projecting her. So people learn through storytelling, and it's a lot more interesting than sitting there, reading another one of those boring textbooks that are so common, I guess.
Yeah, the boring textbooks and just like the articles. If you want to identify a narcissist, these are the things that you need to look for, because it's just when you hear someone else's story, it just resonates better. I mean, there's a power in living or in experiencing what somebody else is going through, and they're like, oh wow, I think I recognize that. I think that's so this gets me into my next question, because your book gave words to things that I couldn't articulate at the time. And now I was in a different order. I read your book well after I had already pulled myself out of my own situation and, sort of pressed the restart button, which is definitely possible. I want everyone to know that, that life is so much better on the other side. And we'll talk about, I'm going to get into techniques for reconnecting with the intuition, because I see that a lot of women they've lost touch with their own intuition, whether it happened during childhood to start or later on, but we'll get into that. But the book gave me words to things I couldn't articulate. And what I found so hard in the moment was that the abuse wasn't obvious, right? And it usually never is. It wasn't physical, it wasn't loud, it was gaslighting, it was confusion, complete confusion. It was making me doubt myself, control as care. And so what are some of the most subtle signs I hope that everybody goes on to read your book. I love audiobooks, so I do it via audio, but what are some of the most subtle signs that someone is in a narcissistically abusive relationship, especially when things look fine from the outside?
Yeah. So the problem is, Dana, that I believe, and I say this in my book, Fake Love, that the majority of narcissists are what we call covert narcissist. And there's this misconception that you can see a narcissist coming, that idea, I guess, that we had before we had our own experience, that a narcissist is someone who brags a lot. They're loud, arrogant, you can see them coming. And that is just not the case. If the thousands of clients I have counseled over the last 10, 15 years are an indication, because I would say at least 70 more probably percent of those beautiful clients were involved with what we call a covert narcissist. And what that means is they're the opposite. They can be shy and introverted, charming, yes, anxious, forever the victim. And this is how they infiltrate your life so easily. They're the last person you would think would be an abuser. And the problem is that, as I explain in Fake Love, all of these techniques that they use, from the love bombing to begin with, and just the teeny tiny red flags that they present in the beginning that you override. And they think, oh, she overrode that one. I'm going to step it up a notch the next time. And they just chip a little bit harder. There's another red flag. And you get where I'm going. The red flags just so insidiously get bigger and brighter and bigger and brighter. But all the while that is happening, you're also developing these amazing skills, or being conditioned to ignore your instincts. In other words, override the red flags. And all the while, they're throwing you breadcrumbs of that person that made you feel good. So like a drug addict, a heroin addict, let's say, who is forever chasing that first euphoric high, which of course is never again attainable, because you develop a tolerance and you need the drug just to become normal. This is what happens. You are forever chasing that feeling. So I just wanted to cement that in place so that people realize that it's not your fault, and it can happen to anyone. Doesn't matter how many letters we have after our name. It can happen to anyone, because it is so insidious that by the time you think something's off here, something's not right, you're trauma bonded to this person. In other words, you're addicted to this roller coaster of emotions and chemical changes in your body. And also you've come up with these amazing survival instincts to survive the abuse, such as minimizing it, rationalizing it away, sometimes even defending it, normalizing it's not that bad. Mm-hmm. So once you're in and you're starting to feel that something's off, normally it's really bad. It's just that you've come up with all of these ways to make it not as bad as it is, to survive it. And one of those concepts is what we call cognitive dissonance, where we dismiss the abuse to be able to survive what is going on and make sense of it. And with those two conflicting beliefs, he's abusing me, but he loves me. If we dismiss the abuse and that it's bad, then we've got to make the abuse okay. So in other words, we would say something to ourselves along the line, for example, he came home late from work again and yelled at me. Yeah, I really did burn the dinner. Or he cheated on me. Well, you know what? I really haven't been giving him enough sex lately. Well, you haven't, because he's been abusing you. So that's where you've got to make the abuse not as bad as it is, if you're going to dismiss it and say to yourself that this is abuse. And that's a survival technique which goes hand in hand with trauma bonding. So when you start to feel that things are off, it's normally that it's really, really bad. So things that you might be experiencing are just you're in a constant state of confusion. You're forever second guessing yourself. You do not trust yourself anymore because you've been gaslighted out of your reality for so long that you don't trust what you're seeing and hearing and feeling, and your abuser has conditioned you to turn to them for what your reality is, the very person who distorted it in the first place. You feel worthless. Your self-esteem is at an all-time low. You can start to feel sick, never well, because you're in a constant state, I guess, of fight or flight, where your heartbeat's going at 1,000,000 miles per hour all the time while you are walking on eggshells 24 hours a day. So you feel run down, then you get sick. And that never being able to please them. Nothing you do will please them, or it's more like you can't predict the consequences of your actions because
Unpredictable.
Yes, because 1 minute you'll do something, that'll be the best thing since sliced bread. The next week you do the same thing and you'll be abused for it. So you're forever hyper vigilant to danger, and that's just a few things, but it's such an insidious process, and all the while your abuser is conditioning you to believe that it's your fault. There's something wrong with you, just like the husband did in the movie Gaslighting, which is where the term is coined from. So if you think it's your fault, and the relationship has gone from, being amazing to them treating you like they hate you most days, then that's what you believe. There's something wrong with you, and it feeds into the narcissist narrative.
Yeah, I think that concept you brought up a lot. My brain is on fire right now. You brought up a couple concepts that I wrote down. The first one was, well, this wasn't the first, in no particular order. The concept of the walking on eggshells and the cortisol release. That's what we call it in medicine. Well, in more holistic care, I'm constantly talking to people about, like, what are you doing as your daily activity? What's your daily cortisol reducing activity, right? That's the stress hormone in your body. Because even just normal circumstances can cause people's cortisol levels to go up, and that affects every part of your body. Now, and then you have to imagine being in this 24/7, and just constantly, there's just constant conflict, and your cortisol levels are high, and people get physically ill. Like, I got to a point where I said, I have to leave or I'm going to get cancer and die. Like, I knew it. Something in me just knew it. I have to get out of this. And I think that the concept of addiction that you brought up, a lot of people think about addiction as the heroin addict, or the methamphetamine addict, or even just like we have, legal cannabis here in the US. I don't know what the state is there, but there's potheads, right? They're constantly smoking weed.
I think it's pretty much the same here, Dana. And they do have legal marijuana here as well. Yes.
Yeah. So people think about addiction in those terms, alcohol addiction. And, we're trained that way, even in medicine. My first job out of residency was I was doing outpatient addiction medicine. So I love mental health, but anything can become addictive if you're needing something to escape to. And also if it activates certain pathways in your brain, the dopamine releasing pathways. And what you said is so true. Like, it's like coming off of heroin for a lot of people. Trying to get out of that situation, and you're constantly up and down, and And so I just want to remind anybody who's watching that if this is your situation, it's not your fault. Just like you said, it's not their fault. A lot of women and men alike, I guess, but a lot of women, I tend to speak more with women about this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
are high powered, high functioning women. And I think part of what I wonder if it gets them is that, like, as an athlete, it's like you come into a situation, something just doesn't feel right, and maybe they're speaking to you wrongly, and you're like, well, I can, as a normal, like, human, with empathy, I can just sit down and talk to them. I'm just going to teach them. Like, maybe they just didn't learn this growing up. I'm just gonna give them a second chance, and I'm gonna sit down with them and, like, teach them, and how this hurts me, and, like, they'll be able to change because I'm an athlete and I'm a type A personality, and I can take coaching really well. So why wouldn't this other person be able to take coaching really well?
Yeah.
And maybe initially they do act like they take the coaching, and that helps over and over again to reinforce what you were talking about, to coming back.
Yeah.
So I think I always wondered in my head if it's I look at it as resilience. I look at it as, you're not weak. If you stayed in this relationship with this person for any length of time, you are a resilient, like, you are
Yeah.
strong, because no other person would be able to stay
Absolutely.
there.
Absolutely. And that's, I say that, I think, right at the end of Fake Love. I say, you didn't become strong because of the abuse. You already were strong. And that's why they chose you. Your strength. Imagine how strong you have to be to survive what you went through. That's how strong you are. Yeah, people think that they're weak because they stayed with their abuser, and it's because they have no validation around how this happened to them.
Yeah, I think that's such an important concept. So I want to talk more about the concept of family, friends, neighbors, right? When you're reaching out for help, because I personally experienced, when I tried to open up to people, most people didn't get it, and most of the time I walked away from that situation feeling worse. I felt weaker. I felt unheard. I felt like
Yeah.
and so you talk about this. Why is it so hard for even close family and friends to recognize what's happening
Yeah.
when someone's being emotionally manipulated and abused? What makes that so challenging for other people? Is it that they just, unless you've been through it, you can't even. I think for me, like, I couldn't even imagine that this type of abuse existed. You don't even see it until you start to identify it, and then you're hearing somebody else talk about, maybe, and then like, a light bulb starts to go off.
Yeah. So narcissistic abuse, coercive control go hand in hand. And people who haven't been through it can't understand that. That's my belief. It's impossible because it is just so insidious, this abuse over time. It's like having a drip in your arm. And sorry, Dana, you're the doctor. What do you
Yeah,
call it?
Ivy. Ivy.
Yeah.
Ivy.
And having a slow drip feed over time. It's like the of poison, just a teeny tiny drop every day. But so people can't understand it. The victim doesn't understand it until they have what I describe as their own light bulb moment. And then it's like, let the Franklin flow.
Yeah.
A river in Australia. It's like they binge videos. And you know why? It's because they're having validation. They're not crazy. They found a name for this. So it's so important to find the right people to speak to. Be like in a support group, and there are many out there online that are private, and it's often our loved ones, and it comes from a place of love, but it's often our loved ones who do the most damage in terms of just their frustration, because their loved one just keeps going back to this jerk. Like, just leave, just get out of it. And they don't understand the trauma bond. And most likely, or a lot of the time, the abuser is manipulating them too. With the smear campaign, they're pretending to be your savior. They're pretending to be concerned about you. So there's all of this stuff going on where your friends' loved ones are being manipulated by your abuser, and also because it's not overt. It's that drip feed. It's like trying to explain gaslighting to someone who, it's becoming like narcissists. It's becoming a bit of a buzzword now, unfortunately. But you say to them, "Oh, I've been gaslighted." And what do you mean? Oh, they keep telling me I'm oversensitive, and telling me that I overreact. Oh, wow, that's really bad. Yeah, but I'm feeling for you. They don't get it. It sounds so trivial when you talk about it. Sometimes I find my beautiful clients, they feel embarrassed because it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it's like death by 1,000 paper cuts. Each one on its own, it's not going to kill you, but it's that build up and just the rewiring of those neural pathways. And the goal of narcissistic abuse is to make you feel crazy. And that's how victims feel, but they can't articulate how they got there. And each little thing on its own, it doesn't seem like that big a deal. I have had so many of my clients over the years say to me, "You know what, Nova? I honestly wished that he had just broken my nose or given me black eyes,
Yeah.
busted ribs or something, because then maybe people would believe me. Then, I would get support. Maybe then I would have thought that it was bad, but I never got hit." That's not to say that physical abuse doesn't go along with narcissistic abuse, but it's you've got to find the right people, or you will have your trauma minimized, and you will be gaslighted just like your abuser did. So when you go to someone like that, whether their motivation is from a place of love or just or ignorance, the outcome is the same. The outcome is that they are doing exactly the same thing that your abuser did, in that they're minimizing what you went through.
Yeah. Yep. And so I think it's really important. I have some resources that I often recommend to people, and I can put them in the information section. But there's a wonderful group on meetup.com called Survivors of Narcissistic Abuse. And I always say I think you pay $20 to get into the group, and they'll do a very short interview, because that's, a great way that they, can just sort of filter a little bit. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful group if people are looking for resources, and it's worldwide. And you have to pick and choose what events you're going to. It's all on Zoom. And are you still taking new clients?
Oh, absolutely. I see people via exactly platforms like this, mainly Zoom, all over the world. In fact, probably the majority of my counseling clients are actually in the US and Canada.
Awesome. Oh, that's awesome, but sort of interesting as well. Like, that's really fascinating what's going on in our countries here.
You do have a bigger population, just slightly, than we do, Dana.
Yeah, and we do lead by example, if you know what I mean.
I just wanted to, while I think of it, I just wanted to reiterate or just really make victims aware that when you're seeking support, it's you've got to be, you've got to have your boundaries up. And now that you've been through this, or boundaries firm, now that you've been through this, you know that they're out there. You know who and what they are. So, and I'm not saying this to sabotage anyone or to stop them from seeking help. I'm simply saying it to make sure that you protect yourself and keep your boundaries firm. What's a narcissist going to do? They're going to look for vulnerable people, and you're always going to find a few of them in these support groups, unfortunately. So keep your boundaries firm, trust your instincts, and just as a bit of added protection, if you feel like it, even though they're private, maybe make a pseudonym account. But just be mindful that these people are out there, and it's not paranoia, it's self-care.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I found with my experience that I gravitated towards the women's only groups because of my situation, and I felt like I was safe in those places.
Yeah.
But it's different for everyone. So, can you you talk a lot about the trauma bond. Can you just briefly explain sort of like what it is? And I think we briefly touched on this, but if you could explain what it is a little bit, and then why it keeps people stuck, basically.
Sure. So I have a whole chapter
Yep.
dedicated to trauma bonding in my
Read the
book.
book. Just read her book. Book
Oh,
clarity.
and the chapter is called "Why Did I Stay?" Because there's so many there's resources out there, probably not enough, and we get women and men get provided these resources to know that there's help out there, to be able to leave. But the reality is that victims of narcissistic abuse, they've got a high IQ most of the time, and they know they should go. They know there's resources out there. They know where to go. They know there's numbers. What they grapple with, what they don't understand is, why do I stay? Why do I keep going back? And that's what they need all the support with. Because if you are trauma bonded to your abuser, you can use those resources. You can, stay for a while in a shelter, but if your abuser has access to you, then you are going to go back. It's like the heroin addict trying to withdraw from heroin and having coffee every day with their drug dealer who doesn't want a paying client to get clean. Anyway, so a trauma bond is a very, very powerful attachment / addiction to your abuser or to this relationship, and the roller coaster of ups and downs and ups and downs. So in the beginning, they're nice, and you get hooked on that feeling. You want that feeling, and you want all that dopamine to be, you want all those dopamine receptors being hit at once, and the oxytocin's flying, and all those chemicals that feel good. And then it comes to a screeching halt, like you've just been booted off your pink cloud. And where is my dopamine? Where's that good feeling again? So you are taught by your abuser what to do to get that feeling back. And of course, they're manipulating you because their love was fake, and what they were presenting was an illusion of love. but you become hooked on that feeling, and then it comes to an abrupt halt. But you want that good feeling again, and it feels so bad to go from here to rock bottom low, where they're treating you like they hate you. So when they throw you a few breadcrumbs of big, the nice treatment, that is like the heroin addict putting the needle back in their arm and going, oh, because they love the heroin? No, because the horrible abuse has stopped. So when you are going through this cycle where there's rock bottom lows and in the end highs, but after that love bombing, there's only perceived highs. What you perceive as them being so nice to me is probably just a day they're not abusing you. And that seems like gold, not because it is, but because of the stark contrast between the rock bottom low and that perceived high. So basically, you become addicted. Your abuser creates a wound that they hurt you, and then they become, through all the strategies, they become the only person who can heal the wound that they created. So the victim is set up. This is why domestic violence victims stay and go back, because they want that relief again, and their abuser is the only person who can provide it. And every addict will tell you that the drug is the number one thing in their life, and they will do anything basically just for that brief moment of relief from the horrible anxiety that comes when that roller coaster, which fills you, that becomes your life, when that is ripped away from you, and now you haven't got that roller coaster that you have become dependent on. Basically, you crash. Where's my chemical cocktail? Why I'm not walking on eggshells anymore. So people think because they ruminate about their abuser all the time and they feel so bad without them, they think they must love them, and love feels good. And so the reality is that it's not love. It's not that it feels good to be with them. It's that it feels so bad to be without them. And that's not love. It's addiction. So you crash when you're without that roller coaster, and it's literally physical, as well, biochemical change
in the brain. The
right.
dopamine.
Yeah, so I mean, you would explain this better than me, Dana, but I kind of liken it to like when you're pregnant and you're getting through the pregnancy, and you're basically on a high to get you through. Then you have the baby, and then 3 days later you have the baby blues, and I'm assuming that's because all of those hormones are just gone, and you've got to now readjust. And that's, to me, that's what's happening. You're in withdrawal, and you just don't understand that it's this toxic person, and it's so hard for the victim to understand, let alone people outside of the relationship. It's a word for Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, and you describe that really well in the book as well, and I love the description, how you weave that in there. I want to make sure that people understand, if this is resonating with them, that again, it's not their fault, and there are ways to get through this and to live an awesome life after that. And it's just, I think it's hard for a lot of people to think of it as, oh my gosh, I have an addiction. Like I'm literally going through withdrawal. What? How did that happen to me? You know? So there's nothing to be ashamed of about that at all. And actually that is like the first start to realize, to understanding the biochemistry of what's happening in your brain, I think, to really give you the insight that you need to make the lasting changes.
Yeah.
You know, and the other thing, something that I see in my own patients, and people that I counsel occasionally on this, and then also that I went through myself, is the complete disconnection from intuition, the self-doubt, right? After years of manipulation, I didn't trust my gut at all. I mean, I also think that I wonder sometimes if this can stem a little bit from childhood issues, whatever came up for people in childhood, and slowly you learned over time that maybe like either you shouldn't put up certain boundaries, you should be nice to the people around you and accommodate, or you should be always giving people, you know, another chance, right? The forgiveness, you should forgive. It comes up a lot within certain religions. Um, and I want to just know, what are some of your strategies? Because I find like step one in breaking this cycle for a lot of people is helping them reconnect with this intuition. And what are your strategies to help people get back in touch with that inner voice and intuition? Because if you're in touch with that intuition, I sniff out narcissists now. I literally walk into a room and oh yeah, I'm gonna stay away from that guy. And if they come over to me, like, I'm not intimidated anymore. I'm just like, hey, yeah, nice to meet you. And I have no problem just literally turning my back and walking the other direction. I used to not be able to do that because I thought I would be being rude. So if someone comes up to talk to me, I have to. And that, you know, after reconnecting with my intuition and support and everything, it changed for me. So what do you recommend, or are there any specific strategies? Don't give away all of your techniques because people just need to read your book, Fake Love. But
Yeah.
what do you recommend for reconnection to that intuition?
Okay, so I am in a kind of different position in that, being a professional counselor working only with victims of narcissistic abuse. When they're reaching out to me, they're in crisis mode, because it's not that you don't want to seek help earlier on. It's just that you probably didn't know what it was, and most people don't know what they're experiencing. So my first suggestion always is to find a trauma-informed therapist who is experienced, and you'll have to ask them, experienced in working with victims of narcissistic abuse. It is so important. Some counselling is not necessarily better than no counselling. There are good lawyers, there are bad lawyers. There's
Amen.
good doctors and there are good counsellors and there are bad counsellors, but also there's counsellors who just don't get it. And it's so important to find someone who is experienced to validate your trauma. And I think that is the first thing. It's one of the first healing strategies I have in the back of my book. Is you have been through just an absolute war. Only you didn't know the rules of engagement. So to heal, to make sure it doesn't happen again, to be able to assert boundaries, you need to understand why and how it happened. So that is incredibly important. And people, they'll think, oh, I'm watching, YouTube after YouTube video, and all I do is read. And you know what? In the beginning, that's normal. You are having your trauma validated. It's like opening, finding a key to your prison and finally being let free. Eventually, and hopefully your therapist will support you through this, you will come to realize, because you'll start trusting your instincts, that if you're overdoing it, which is normal, that it's kind of becoming your new addiction. It's taking over when it starts to have a negative impact on your life. But in the beginning, that's normal. So, but anyway, I won't get too far into that. I talk a lot more about that in the book, and coming to that balance eventually where your self-care completely overrides your connection with the narcissistic abuse recovery community. So validation is key, because once you understand what happened to you and you process your trauma, you can start to work on your own boundaries, because you weren't allowed to have any when you were with your abuser. And you now have to put them in place and never, ever lower them. And you have to start doing that while it feels bad. And that's the reality, is that when you start going, no, sorry, I can't help you with that, or no, this is what I value, because boundaries are so simple. They're just about us being respected. No, I can't go there tonight. I'm not feeling like you're going to send out a 10-page email to explain why. When you first start doing that, you feel bad. Oh, they're going to hate me. I feel so guilty. I could have helped them. I should have said yes. I know I wanted to say no, but I should have said yes. And you've got to consistently do it while it feels bad, and override that with logic. What am I doing wrong here? I've simply said to them, I can't help them out. The thing is, and the reason why we never, ever lower our boundaries is because the people who love you, people who have a normal range of emotions, people who respect you, people who you want in your life, they won't ask you to. You'll say, oh, no, sorry. And they'll go, yeah, that's fine, Dana. No worries. Yep, catch you later. Whereas a toxic person will make you feel bad. Why? You explain to me why. Or they'll sulk and eventually do what they want. So you never lower them, because healthy people won't ask you to, and the toxic people are the very people you need to maintain them for. And if they think badly of you, who cares?
That's a huge point. I mean, the difference between a healthy communication is, when you set a boundary, hey, I'm just a little curious. Could we talk more about it? Is there any, I wanted to do this with you. Could you tell me, is there any reason why you're, do you feel comfortable sharing with me? Like, these are all healthy talks, whereas the narcissist will totally just be like, what's wrong with you? Like, God, fine, I'll go. Like that's like, they just complete invalidation. So I think those are definitely signs to look out for. I wanted to touch back on the point, and again, you got to read the book Fake Love, because you touch on this in the book, in the story that you tell. I think that a lot of people might come out of this or start to realize what's happening, and maybe they're scared to seek therapy because they've already been to couples counseling with the narcissist, and they may have very well, that may have made their situation worse and validated the narcissist in that situation with an unskilled therapist who was manipulated by them and was not able to see through. And so I just want to point out that what you said was pertinent. There are some really good therapists out there, and there are some really bad therapists, or I should say misinformed or uninformed. And so again, feel free to reach out to either one of us for some directional resources, if you need them, whatever you need. But I wouldn't just make an appointment with whoever your insurance covers here in the US. That's not advisable. You want to definitely make sure that they have experience with narcissistic abuse
Yeah.
I often find that like asking them directly sometimes is not, I don't know, maybe the best. It's usually helpful just to get recommendations from
Yeah.
people who have gone through it.
That's a really good point. It's like, giving a narcissist the weapons they need because you're telling them what to say. So of course, I'm all over that. Come see
Yeah, I
me.
can do that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know how to do that.
So
100%.
I think that's a really good point. It's so hard, but word of mouth is always the best recommendation, I believe. So look in your support groups online and ask people, because they're your team, they're your tribe. And they'll say, oh, yeah, I went to this one, don't go see them. They made me want to go back. Or they might say, oh, this person was brilliant. So they're just invaluable, the support groups, for lawyers too, lawyers and therapists, child psychologists, which people need a lot. Word of mouth, I think, is the best.
Yeah, I think that's a pertinent point as well with a lawyer, because most people, especially if you have kids, need to find legal resources, and someone that fully understands narcissism can make it or break it with your legal case, because the system, just putting this out there, it's not set up to recognize this as an issue. And so you need to really so you're not just, leaking money, basically. You really need to find somebody that's
And
experienced and
trusting
understands
your
it's possible.
instincts. Sorry,
Yeah.
trusting your instincts. You'll know, you'll know very quickly whether a therapist gets it or not. You'll feel like and I hear this from all the clients who come to see me after having been to a therapist who just doesn't get it. You'll end up educating, or feeling like you are educating the therapist, and come out of it just feeling more hopeless than you went in. Yeah.
And another thing that I often advocate, I'm a daily yogi, and I'm a personal trainer as well, in my background. And I really have found that that talk therapy is awesome and wonderful. You need that initially, you need that. And I find some people almost just get stuck in this cycle. And the exit for me, and how I direct my patients and people that come to me, are that some version of a mindful practice. So I personally find that a breath work, an active breath work session, or a yoga can be very helpful, right? Yoga, particularly because you can incorporate the breath work into it, and you can release energy from your body. The physical asanas of yoga are meant to release that energy. And so you're not just sitting down to try to meditate and your brain's like, blah, 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 blah. And then you can get into a shavasana, which is otherwise known as like a meditation, or you can go into breath work. Most people don't recognize, especially in Western medicine, the connection between the actual nervous system and how much control we have over it. So just a simple method called diaphragmatic breathing, where you have a diaphragm and you're pushing air into your belly, because we do chest breathing a lot, short, shallow chest breathing. By pushing air into your belly, you're stimulating the vagus nerve, and that vagus nerve helps to calm your central nervous system. So when you go into fight or flight, just having these simple skills to come back to, and really understanding the neuroplasticity of the brain, we can rewire our brains. This is a matter of brain rewiring to me. And so the question is how are you going to do it? You can't just sit there eventually and just talking until you have to actually do an activity. If I want to teach you to play tennis or volleyball, I was a volleyball player, I can probably teach you some basic volleyball. Even if you're older, I can teach you to, get the ball back and forth, but you have to practice. You're not going to learn without practicing. And so this rewiring of the brain takes practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I tell people, or talk to my clients and my online groups about the fact that it's not going to feel good. to begin with. Your brain is not going to go snap back to the way it was or where you want it to be because now you want it to. It's about training it. It's about consistency. So yeah, every time, like your exercises and your yoga classes, that self-care, I just say exercise, in my book. You can't beat it for getting those endorphins flowing, and it's so incredibly important. And the relaxation techniques and the breathing and getting all of that right with your self-care. But it's about, as you said, it's about consistency. You've got to rewire those neural pathways. You've got to do it all the time, and it's not going to be this linear thing.
It's like,
I think, and I think it's really important to stress that to people, because they'll feel so good and then they'll have a bad day, and that's to be expected. And they beat themselves up because they failed. No, you didn't fail. It's a bad day. It's a glitch. It's a bad day. It's not a bad life. And they have cravings. A craving for someone who's in withdrawal who's trauma bonded is, oh, I wonder what they're doing. I really, really want to unblock them. Oh, I wonder what that new person they're going out with is doing on Instagram. I'll just have a sneak peek, or I'll ask their best friend, or I'll just happen to meet them somewhere. That is the addicted brain trying to get the drug back. Why? Because the anxiety has built and built and built with that craving. And it gets to the point where the only way to get rid of that terrible, terrible anxiety is to unblock them. And like the heroin addict with the needle in the arm, just for a second, that second of relief is all you can think about. But of course, it just starts up again and again. So you've got to expect, and what I ask my clients to do is to prepare for the bad days. It's not going to be linear. So there's going to be some days where you want to unblock them, or maybe you're just minimizing, thinking, was it really that bad? Maybe it was my fault, which is a craving in itself, because you're trying to make the drug not as bad as it is so you can have it back. You're apportioning blame to yourself and minimizing how bad it is to get it back. It's about preparing for the bad days. Okay, I'm going to have a bad day. I don't want to be blindsided by it. So when that bad day comes, I'm going to have a sponsor, like someone in AA would. I'm going to have my best friend. I'm going to call them, and I'm going to say to them, I feel like I'm going to unblock. Talk me out of it, like a sponsor would. I'm going to have a punching bag ready. I'm going to have some strategy, because when those bad days come, and they will, it's not if, it's when, you're prepared, and you won't feel like you've wasted all that time on your healing journey, and you'll just get straight back on the horse. The same, if you do unblock and basically have contact again, which is what that is, don't sit there and beat yourself up for, months. Just, it's normal. And you had a craving, you get support, and you get back on that horse, because it's just a glitch.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I like to remind people that practice of that you put into place with the mindfulness and rewiring it. People think of yoga as like, oh, this is going to take me an hour, and it doesn't need to be that. It can be a 5 to 10 minute practice once a day. That's how you make it consistent. That's how you build new neuronal pathways in your brain is by doing something every day for a minimum of 90 days for most people. I say like 180 days for a lot of people. Like the average seems, just do it once a day, make 5 or 10 minutes. Don't go over that 5 or 10 minutes. Just keep yourself steady Eddie in that regard. And I think that's super helpful, yeah, to have that plan. And probably write it out. I think the plan should be written out and like posted wherever you can post it. I think it's helpful, right?
Absolutely. I advocate for getting a self-care journal, and buy something that looks beautiful, inviting. You want to write in it because it just makes it real. When it's tangible, and also don't treat it like this is something that comes, second or third in your life. Make it your number one thing in your life, before work, before the kids. I know that sounds awful, but your kids, your job, your relationships, every single thing in your life will improve when you prioritize your self-care. But it feels selfish a lot of the time in the beginning to do anything for yourself, because you were taught that your needs aren't important. It's always got to be about someone else.
It's so good. I just want to insert this. It is so good for your kids seeing you do self-care. They learn by modeling. I mean, now they know. It's like, hey, guys, I need a break. I'm going to go do my yoga for 20 minutes. And, just please try to interrupt me only if it's an emergency. And that is not selfish. That is, they're seeing that. And they don't even, my 6-year-old doesn't even need to be doing it right now, but she's seeing that, I know. And eventually she's going to internalize that and realize, oh, like mom loved me and so much, and mom also took care of herself, right? And that's more than any words and anything you could teach your child with speaking to them.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think that's just such an incredibly important point, is that we think we're doing the best thing for our children if we have no needs and everything's about them, and we run ourselves ragged, and we make it all about them. Well, number one, we may be teaching our children that someone should always be looking after them. That's something you might inadvertently be teaching them, and or teaching them that you don't have any needs of your own. Both of those things could be true. It's like children in a domestic violence situation, when you remain because you think it's better for the children to not be in two homes, and the children are being role modeled how to either be a victim or an abuser. There's just, children don't want a perfect parent. They crave and they want a happy one. And if you're unfulfilled, if you're just so drained and exhausted, then you can't be emotionally available to them like you would like. And the example that I use in Fake Love is, that you might remember, Dana, is the example of when you hop on a plane, and the host or the hostess will be standing there, and they'll be going, in case of an accident, the masks will drop down, and parents secure yours first. Okay, and the reason for that is obvious, because little ones can't secure their own mask, and they need you to be stable. They need you to look after you so you can look after them. So the kids don't want a perfect mom, they want a happy one. And you're actually not perfect if you're not prioritizing yourself, Kate. When I say not perfect, our energy resources are finite, and you can't be that emotionally available person if you're empty.
Yeah, That's such a true statement right there. 100%. I got a really nice I just wanna share this. So yesterday, I was, coming home from the office, and my kids are 50-50 custody, and I was coming home from the office late, because I work late some nights when I don't have my kids especially, and I work long days. And, my 13-year-old on the phone with me, he said, "You know what, mom? I just wanna thank you for, putting in all the work that you do. And I know
Oh,
you, like, really wanted to do this, for yourself and for the family with your business, and, just wanna thank you." And I was like, you know, it was just such a nice reinforcement that he sees it and he also sees my presence, but I think there's so I also want to say that for anyone who's in a narcissistic romantic relationship with children, and they're a stay-at-home mom, and they're afraid of what's going to happen next because they're going to have to go to work. I just want to give that perspective. I've always worked. I started medical school with a 6-week-old infant, my son, in tow, and I felt so guilty for so long, and also just like transitioning can be very hard, to going from having one life that looks like, something, and then changing that. But I really truly believe that if you can find peace within yourself and be present with your children, they will see your work as hard work. They will hope eventually come around to identify, like, no, mom was present with us when she was present, and she went to work because that's what she had to do for us.
yeah.
And I want people to keep that in mind if that's a concern, for leaving, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think guilt, it's just a thing for working mothers, isn't it? You feel guilty that, you're not there with them enough, but the reality is that kids are resilient, and that's just the way it is these days.
Yeah.
Parents both need to work, or, if they're on their own, they have to work. And kids are used to going to school and, after school care and things like that. It's about what you do when you do have that time with them. So if you know that there's this pattern which is totally normal, where you're working, they're at school, they know it's normal. So your guilt it's irrational, because your kids, it's you that's feeling the guilt, whereas the kids are probably the odd one out if they're not in after school care, if that makes sense, because parents both have to work. It's about what you do on the weekends, planning, spending that quality time with them, so the kids know I guess that attachment style comes into play, where they trust mum's always coming back, dad's always coming back. Without, yeah, she works during the week, but on the weekend we have our quality one-on-one time, and they're okay with that. It's just the mums that feel the guilt, because they think, and a lot of the time they've been conditioned to believe, that they're doing something wrong. And that can come from just, well, of course, the narcissist who's abused you, but also, people who are just naive or a little ignorant, who just want to make you feel bad because you're working, and you should be staying home and looking after the kids. And that's just not possible 99% of the time.
Yeah.
You're lucky if you can do that, if you're able to do that. But you're also able to work if that's what fulfills you. You
Yeah.
don't have to stay at home if you're fulfilled by having a career and a profession. That's okay. But yeah, you can do either if you're able, and be proud of yourself, and your kids are going to love you just the same if they can predict that you will be there when that quality time is their norm.
100%. I'm right there with you on that. I am realizing that we have been talking for an hour now.
I
I
know,
feel like
right?
there's so many. I feel
So
like
what
I want to
happens
be
when you're
conscious
both
of your time, but there's so many other things that we could go off. I think this episode has been centered really around like romantic relationships with narcissists,
yeah,
but then there's like what to do when you think you have a parent who's a narcissist who you have to maintain, and how do you speak to your children about narcissism, because
yeah,
after you leave, I think it's important to arm them with skills for boundaries and age appropriate stuff. So I feel like these are all things that we probably need to come back to at some point.
yeah.
Um,
I would love
yeah,
to, Dana, and I'll
yeah.
just let your listeners know that I know we have just spoken about intimate relationships, but fake love is for everyone, and it's also for the families of victims to help them to understand. It is for victims of narcissistic parents. It's for the children of narcissists. There's lots of information in it about divorcing a narcissist, and it's also for men, because narcissistic abuse is not gender specific. Yes, we both of us see far more women, but this is a very covert type of abuse, and women can be just as damaging and dangerous. So fake love is for everyone, and there are not just airy fairy pie in the sky strategies there to escape if you're still with your abuser and heal. There's 13 concrete strategies to help you escape and or to heal.
I think that was a wonderful. I was going to ask you for I was going to ask you for a final reflection. If one person could walk away with just one thing from fake love. You went over a bunch of things that they can get from fake love. Do you have but if you could let our viewers walk away with just one thing that they like, one truth they could really, really internalize for a conclusion, what would it be that you would want them to
Sure.
feel or understand?
Just quickly, I forgot that this is a really important one. There's lots of information in there on how to co-parent. Really, it's parallel parenting, but how to deal with that narcissistic ex when you share a child. So, yeah, that's really important. But what would I say?
Extremely important.
Yeah.
I was going to say that could be a whole episode in itself on how to effectively parallel parents. And I just want to tell people, if you've heard that terminology, I want to let you know, at least in the US court system, you're not going to find judges that fully comprehend that, and you're not going to find judges that really understand narcissism at all. So that's going to be something that you're going to have to take on your own. It is very possible. It does take a little bit of a learning curve, and that's like that could be a whole separate episode in itself. How to parallel parents effectively, and how to talk to your kids and help your kids to develop healthy boundaries, because they're going to need them. And I think of it almost as a blessing, by the way. And this is a tangent, but I think of it as a blessing if, oftentimes we want to protect and shield our kids, and then they get out into the real world and they're like, they've been protected and shielded for all their lives and they don't know what to do. So in a way, having to go through something like this at a younger age with a parent and having to learn how to set boundaries is not really the worst thing in the world for a lot of kids. I mean, it is what it is. They're going to have to do that with bosses and everyone else in the world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Funnily enough, I just did a podcast episode on my podcast with a therapist in Canada, AJ. I can't think of her last name. Anyway, people, if they want to, they can find the episode I did with AJ. And she works with children who have to go to the home of the parent. They've been court ordered, they don't want to, or they're being manipulated over there to be able to survive, because as you said, it is what it is. And they have to develop their own survival techniques because you're not there. So yeah, it was such an interesting episode. But what would I say if I was going to just kind of wrap it up and help victims with the the most important things to remember. I would say that the most important thing to remember is that it was not your fault. It was not your fault. I don't care what you did. I don't care. I don't care if you smash plates. I don't care if you started going crazy and doing all these crazy things that were outside of your character. That's another episode where we call that reactive abuse. I don't care, because you are now the expert in your trauma, and this was not your fault. You were led to that place that you found yourself in the second you laid eyes on your abuser. It was always going to happen. The goal is to make you feel crazy. It was not your fault. You have to give yourself closure. You're never going to get it from the narcissist who benefits from you having none. And it's really important to get that closure with a therapist, with support, so that you can move on. And to be able to do that, you have to forgive yourself. You don't have to forgive your abuser. You can do that if you want, but you don't have to. Some people think that forgiveness is the key to setting you free, and that's great. That's great if that works for them, but I would never presume to project that on to someone who resents that and knows that if their abuser had another chance, they'd do it all over again, because they're not one bit sorry. The difference is they just don't occupy space in your head anymore, because you're putting a brick wall, so to speak, between them and you. And you don't have to forgive them to do that. So closure, validating your trauma is so important, and finding the right therapist and giving yourself closure, forgiving yourself, and self-care, all those things. You're empty now, and whether it was toxic or not, well, it was toxic. It filled you. It filled you. Yet your life was run by this roller coaster, and now that's gone. So there's an emptiness. That's why people go back. And now you've got to fill it, but you've got to fill it with something positive. And that's where your self-care comes in, and finding your passions again. You weren't allowed to have any. You don't even remember what you were passionate about. You've got to find those things and feel this. And don't beat yourself. This is really important. Don't beat yourself up for having a bad day. Prepare for it.
Mm-hmm. Amen. That all is just so, so important. So I just want to thank you so much for sharing this space with me today. I could go on talking for hours. Your work has been a guiding light for so many, myself included. If you want to just sort of briefly tell us where listeners can find you, your book, how they can reach out to support, and I will also post those as well in the notes.
So everyone, Dana's going to put the links down below, but you can look if you would like to have a one-on-one Zoom counselling session with me. I counsel people all over the world. It's just a matter of working out the time zone, like Dana and I did today. And I would love to be able to support you. If you would like to order my book, it's available worldwide in Canada, the US, UK, New Zealand, I think pretty much everywhere. And it's available in Audible. The Audible's fantastic, Kindle and paperback. I think you'll find it in pretty much all the major bookstores, and order it in the smaller ones. And also listen to my podcast, which you can also find on Apple or really anywhere wherever you get your podcast, Spotify maybe, and it's called Fake Love and Flying Monkeys. And hopefully Dana will be a guest of mine on Fake Love and Flying Monkeys in the near future.
I love that. And I love I love that you added in and flying monkeys at the end. And if you don't know what flying monkeys are, you need to go read the book and you need to go to Nova's podcast
we
as well.
Get into the flying monkeys. So many millions of things we didn't have time to talk about, but yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. I'm just so grateful for you being here, and thank you. What time is it over there, by the way?
It is just after 11 a.m. Oh, what is that? It's actually, no, we've been talking for ages. So it's about, it's about 11:45 midday on Wednesday.
So here it is Tuesday at 9:45 p.m. or 21:45. Yeah. So
it's 11:45, nearly midday Wednesday here.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's amazing. It's incredible. So thank you, and I will talk to you soon.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks, Dana.
Bye-bye.
Bye.